Obviously, the scenario has not been good for a very long time. I've been talking about this, every time I keep on talking about this because disability, as most of you all may be aware, it was a very neglected sector for a very long time, So there are many laws that are there in the country from many years ago, 1995, our first Disability Act was passed. Then, but in all these years, nothing much was done in our state. That is a fact, and I keep on saying that we have to be honest about our failings. If we want to move forward, improve ourselves, then we have to be honest about our failings. And when I talk about the neglect in our state, I am not talking about one particular government. I'm not talking about one particular political party. It's everybody in general, all political parties, political leaders, our society as a whole, not much attention was paid to this sector, nothing much was done. Laws were not properly implemented. That's why we are in the situation that we are in now. We should have a lot more going, But then the thing is, because of all this neglect, a lot of things that should have been started a long time ago, it was not started. The services that are needed, the disability services that should have been there, it's still not there. The good thing is that a lot of progress, good progress, is being made in this, past few years. So we, of course, are very happy about that. We are finally, at least now moving in the right direction in many areas. So this is a very good thing that is happening in our state. But of course, as I said, because there are still, a lot of things that needs to be done. So we still have a lot of work that, much work ahead of us. Today's program is about Mokan itu Ekta project. Korea say in collaboration with the Prodigal's Home here based in Dimapur. So we've come together to Mokan Naga Manukan and then the non-Naga communities in our state are also, see, we all have different languages, different dialects. Even among the Nagas themselves also, we don't have a common Naga language. So Mokhanla itu tribes kande sob manubi alak words cholaigena disability describe kore, So we are not aware about what kind of words are used, by different tribes. Except my own tribe, I'm Angami, so I may know what is said in Angami, but then the other tribes, I don't know. So bring everyone together. Let us see how disability is described. Because historically, if you look at it, it's not only about Naga languages, Naga dialects, or Indian languages. It's about, the world over, different languages, even English. There are many, in olden days, those days, many words are there which are discriminatory in nature or, that gives out negative a connotation, the word may give out a negative vibe, where describes disability in a bad way. So many of these words are nowadays being done away with, and better words are being used, because when words, when we talk about words, we may not think much about it, but words are very important because when we talk about something in a negative way, then automatically our mindset, our attitude towards that also becomes negative, So when the disability, I think all tribes, that's why that is the reason we, that this project has been going on for some time, but we thought it'll be better, for all of us to come for a consultation, talk about these things. And so as I said earlier also in my speech, I was thinking, I guess, that most of the tribes, also, the words that we use, I think, are negative, about disability. So the intention is to bring all these things together. Let's see what it is, or how it is said in all the dialects, and then we can try and develop some new good words also, and maybe some common Naga words also to describe disability, different types of disability. And if there are some good words that are used in any tribe, in any of the tribes, then we can use those also as a common distinct Naga word, that is the idea behind this project.
Ma'am, do you also think that the state government or the department in general is providing or is helping to promote the disabled individuals here in our state?
There is a lot more that everyone, including the government, can do. There, as I said, because of the neglect in the past, and because of that, awareness is very poor. Even in the government sector, we have to acknowledge that. But of course, now a lot of work is being done with them also in the government sector, with the various departments. So the good thing is that awareness is improving, because even in the, among the officials, among the departments, if there is no proper awareness, why is something needed? It may be a law, and we may be saying comply with this law, implement this law. But if there is no proper understanding of why we need to implement that law, so if the proper understanding of disability and why this law is needed, to ensure that people with disabilities are getting equal opportunities. If government officials also, if the state government does, people in the government who need to implement these, if they do not understand it properly, then implementation will never be done properly. Now you can understand what I'm saying. Now, so that is what we are trying to do with the government also. We are working with various departments, conducting various kinds of workshops to create awareness about the various systems that need to be put in place, the various laws that needs to be implemented. So there is a lot of work for everyone, including the government, the state government, but steps are also being taken. Various actions are also happening in various areas. So we have to continue to work, and we hope that everyone will continue to work with us, cooperate also where necessary, and get the, these things moving as quickly as possible.
These days we will be able to have another meeting together with the churches. And it's not only about making the church inclusive, it is also about the services that the church is primed, in the right position to provide for many categories of disabilities. And that is one thing that I have been saying over and over again. We in Nagaland, because, that's the truth, that there was a lot of neglect in the disability sector for a very, very long time. It is only in this past few years that we are making some progress, and we are happy about that. But we still have a very, very long way to go, and a lot of work to be done. And the services, the rehabilitation services, the therapies, the, various kinds of services that disabled people need to live their lives, to be able to function on an everyday basis. Many of them are still lacking in our society, in our state, because of the neglect. Nothing was started for so many years, through the years, nothing was started. So now a few private centers are popping up, which is a very good thing. The government is, still lacking in so many ways. Some are being started. Of course, we have the DDRC, where, led by Dr. Inli, which is doing a lot of good work here in Dimapur, or for areas around Dimapur. But that is only one center, and how much can it do? How will it serve the rest of the state? So we do have a huge lack of services, so the church is actually in a great position to be able to provide some of these services, volunteer services also. And but as I said, this is another topic. So I hope we get the time one of these days to have another good discussion about the things, many of these things which I feel the church can do, and which I hope they will also work with us, get more involved in the disability sector. So I will just go quickly through some of these. This is not only about the language that we are talking about today, but if we want to do anything in the disability sector, then we have to first understand the disability issues and why something is so important, because without understanding that, we can talk about doing this, we can talk about doing that, we're going to start this project, or we are going to become, start a mission, a kind of ministry in the disability sector. But without really understanding what disability is, what the issues are and what the needs are and why such a thing is needed, then in the end it becomes a useless exercise or becomes a kind of a waste of time also in many cases. So very simply, so we'll just talk about these, of course, very, very basic things, but what is disability? Dr. Yuli also has discussed, a few of these things, and he has spoken about some of the different types of disabilities that are there. I also had included that, but I will skip that part. But Dr. Yuli, of course, was speaking in a medical point of view, so some were sounding very scary, but I can assure you that being a disabled person is nothing to be frightened about. It is not really scary. Of course, it is true that there are some conditions which are very painful also, which are very, I know it creates a lot of problems in an individual's life, that there is no doubt about that. But disability, when you talk about disability, it is not really, it is not something to be scared about. It is not something to be ashamed about. It is not something, as I said, it's not something really scary or to be afraid about. That is just a point that I wanted to make. And with regard to the disability day also, our associate pastor also has mentioned, I'm also not really a very big fan of those kind of special days, because it's like, giving out some kind of charitable handout to the disabled community. Oh, we are opening the church today for you, you come and pray with us, So, we don't need that kind of pity. We need inclusion. We want to be included in everything that is going on, Think about our needs, that is all we are saying, and then most of the needs that we are talking about is not even expensive, or it's not even as if you need 3-4 days, to plan it out. Once it is there in the planning process only, once you build your buildings, beginning the planning of your building, to include persons with disabilities, then you are not going to be spending any extra money afterwards, extra expenses also. So all these kind of special days is good. I'm not saying it's bad, but then I myself am not really a very big fan of those kind of things. So about disability, as we all know, it's easy because many people, we all know what a disability is, but many times when it really comes down to it, sometimes we don't even understand what disability actually is also. So obviously, Dr. Ingley also has mentioned already earlier, it is about any condition of the body or mind that makes it more difficult for the person with the condition to do certain activities and interact with the world around them. And so as already pointed out, there are many different types of disabilities, and some people may have more than one. And disabilities obviously can occur in many ways. A person can be born with it. It can be due to illness or an accident. Like me, I met with an accident in 2006 and injured my spinal cord and landed up in a wheelchair. So I kind of know both worlds as a non-disabled person. I lived the better part of my life as a non-disabled person, and after that only became disabled after a car wreck that I was involved in. So can we go to the next one? A person, when we talk about a person with disability, it can be anyone can go through temporary disabilities. You break your leg or something like that, which impedes your movement for a couple of months maybe, or something like that. That is a temporary disability. But when we talk about a person with disability, we are talking about a person with long-term, either physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments. And when we again talk about people with disabilities or the disabled community, we are usually referring to a single population of people, the people who are disabled. But just wanting to be clear is that disabled people are actually a very diverse group. Like non-disabled people, they are a diverse group of people with a wide range of needs. And this is something that people need to understand, because people would take the example of one disability, and the needs of one disability, and think that it serves everybody else. So, like non-disabled people, we all have different needs, different. We have different needs. We act in different ways. We have different gifts and talents. In the same way, disabled people are also a diverse group with different needs and different wide range of needs. So two people with the same type of disability can be affected in very different ways. So that is also needs to be understood by everybody. Like for example, I'm a wheelchair user. So another wheelchair user may be there, but both of us, there may be many things that I can do that other wheelchair user may not be able to do, or many things that he or she can do which I cannot do. So just because I can do something, don't jump to the conclusion that that person can do the same thing, or because I cannot do something, don't jump to the conclusion that the other wheelchair person cannot do it. So we all have. What was I saying now? I'm getting confused because anyway, we can all be affected in very different ways. And okay, let's go to the next one. So I just wanted to talk about this benchmark disability also. Because now I will just give a short summary of the RPWD Act also later on, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. So this, because that one is in force now, that Disability Act is in force. So you will many times hear this term, benchmark disability. Now this one in Nagaland, now what we are observing is that it is creating quite a lot of confusion also. Because benchmark disability, now people are even thinking that only people with the benchmark disabilities are disabled people. The ones who are not benchmark are not disabled, but that is false. That is a misunderstanding of the term benchmark disability. So a person with benchmark disability is obviously disabilities, they need to be assessed by medical doctors. You need to go and meet, if you think you have a disability, then a doctor has to check you up, assess you, and give a percentage of how much your disabilities. It can be 10%, 40%, 50%, I'm 90%, so that kind of thing. So when a doctor certifies your disability and gives the percentage, a person with benchmark disability should have at least 40% and above. So 40, 50, 60 up to 100 will be benchmark disability. Now why this term benchmark disability is significant is that under the Disability Act 2016, the one that we are following now, is there are certain benefits like the 4% reservation. There is 4% reservation in government jobs for persons with disabilities. So those kinds of benefits, these are, can be availed only by people with benchmark disabilities, 40% and above. But this does not mean that people who have 30% or 20% disability are not disabled. Disabled people, it can be just a small thing maybe in your physical body, but if it is, disturbing or creating obstacles in your everyday functions, in your day-to-day life, then obviously that is a disability. So we have noticed that there are a lot of people who are being confused about this term benchmark disability. That's why I just wanted to clear this up. This is only for certain benefits that are there under the Act. Otherwise, 40 and below are also disabled. So, so the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. is now the overarching legal framework on disability rights in India. The first Disability Act actually was passed in 1995. And we have to be honest, I've already said, nothing much was done in our state for a long time. And this was largely because of poor awareness and understanding of disability and disability issues. So now, in 2016, this new act was enacted in the parliament. It was passed in parliament and came into force in April 2017. So, yeah, just go to the next one. So I will not be going through all the act. It's going to take a long time, so I will just give an overview of it. So this act, the RPWD Act, it promotes and protects the rights and dignity of people with disabilities in all aspects of life: educational, social, legal, economic, cultural, political, and political. So there are various chapters and provisions with regard to all these aspects of life in order to make sure that people with disabilities, people who live with disabilities are getting equal opportunities. They are being included in all the various aspects of life. So you will find various chapters on this. For example, in education, you will find that now the focus is on inclusive education, bringing both children with disabilities and non-disabled children together into one classroom, making sure that they learn together, grow together, and so that this fosters an inclusive mindset in children. So when they grow up, when they go out into the wider society, we can be sure that, the kind of feeling that most people have today, that will slowly disappear as we, we nurture our children in this inclusive mindset. So this inclusive education is a very, very important clause is a very important provision under the Disability Act, because it ensures that children with disabilities, people with disabilities, get access to quality education, and as well as in all the other aspects. It provides for full and effective participation and inclusion in society, and this applies not only to government, but it also applies to non-government and private organizations. That means to society as a whole. Right now, our focus has been largely with the government, because the government, as we said, has, it's not about the present government or one political party, it's about all governments, it's about all our political parties, it's about all our political leaders, For a long time, nobody has paid attention, nothing was done by the government. So, in order to push things through, obviously the ultimate authority ultimately comes down to the government. So we are pushing the government, trying to make sure that things are moving in the right direction. But to be sure, this is not only for the government, but it's for the entire society, private organizations, businesses who are running shops and who have, any commercial activity going on. All these, the laws that are there, the provisions that are there under the Disability Act, it applies to the entire spectrum of, the society, not only the government. Then, now many people, we get asked also why disability, such kind of disability-specific laws and disability-specific legislations are required. So we will just, let us just quickly go through some statistics and facts about disability and people with disabilities. So World Disability Report by WHO and the World Bank estimates that 16% of the world's population experience significant disability. 16%. So this is an estimated 1.3 billion people, or 1 in 6 of every, of us. One person in every 6 person has a disability, and that also a significant disability. We are not talking about the minor disability. So this is a worldwide disability report, and this figure is increasing, will only continue to rise, because now with better medical interventions, the rise in population, and the people living longer, and all those kind of things, and then now non-communication, communicable diseases also have basically disappeared in many ways. So now people are living longer. So because of all these, the numbers, the figures of disabled people across the globe, they are only set to keep on rising as we move forward. So then in India, as per the census 2011, our new census still it was supposed to be in 2021, it still has not been completed. So it is home to over 26.8 million persons with disabilities, that is 2.21% of the population as per census 2011. Now in Nagaland, as per census 2011, we have the figure is 29,631, that is 1.5% of the total population, nearly 30,000, and 16,000 male and 13,400 female as per census 2011. But I just want to make something very clear. Now this about 30,000 that we talk about, that we follow, the official figure that we follow in Nagaland is a very, very conservative figure. It is an underestimation, because the numbers, the actual numbers will actually be much higher than this, thousands more than the 30,000 that we are following at the currently. There are many reasons for this, and one is that at that time in 2011, now more than 10 years have passed, at that time awareness about disability was also much poorer than it is now. So even with families with disabilities, people with disabilities themselves, that awareness was not there, to register themselves as a disabled person. And because of all the stigma and discrimination, some people don't even want to acknowledge that they are disabled. Then even the census takers, the awareness among the people who took the census also was not, it was not done as well as we would hope. So, the figures, the counting that was done at that time was, it was an underestimation. And of course now several years have passed, and the numbers would have definitely grown by itself. And in the meantime, the 2016 Act, the new Act that we are following now, that is in force now, has many disabilities that were not acknowledged or recognized or not thought about much at that time. In 2011, it has now been specified under the new Disability Act. So none of this new, newly recognized or acknowledged, the ones that we are becoming, it has been there for years and years, obviously, but then we were not very aware of it. So none of these disabilities have been counted in the 2011 census. So the actual number of disabled people, this one is a very tricky number, that we follow, because when we say about 30,000, it doesn't sound, it sounds a lot also. 30,000, I'm not saying is a poor number, but still, there will be thousands more, and because of the faulty figures that we have, sometimes it is also very difficult to carry out our programs. Then, so some more, so when we, first of all, when we talk about disability numbers, the numbers that we've just seen, it is not about just a few stray figures that we are talking about here and there. Many people, when they talk about disability, they think that it is just about a few countable things. In fact, in the course of our work, talking to some communities, when we talk about disability, ask them about what types of disabilities are there in their community, or how many deaf people are there in your village, for example. Do you have any figures? No, we don't have any disabled. Makan disabled, Manunai Makala village, Makala colony. So that misconception is still there, as if disability is just something that is very rare, and it doesn't happen to, it happens to only 1 or 2 persons by chance. That kind of feeling is still there in many communities. But it is actually not. Disability is very common. They are there everywhere, in every section of society. They can be men, women, children, they can be employers or employees, they can be customers, they can, students, teachers, in every section of society, you can be sure there will be disabled people. Maybe some people are in denial, that is for sure, it's still happening, but there will be disabled people in every section of society. This is one thing that we need to realize, and the only thing that distinguishes a person with disability, it's not that they are different from any other person, they are like any other citizen. The only thing that distinguishes them is that they may need some adjustment or some adaptation in order to be able to do certain things in the same way that people without disability do. And so, for example, our associate pastor was earlier talking about wheelchair-bound, wheelchair user. Why we who use wheelchairs do not like the word wheelchair-bound, I will just explain. It's because now I cannot walk, I cannot use my legs, to walk the way, the so-called normal people. So when we talk about normal and abnormal, I keep on saying, who's normal? Are the disabled people normal or the non-disabled people normal? Because who can say which one is normal? So anyway, the normal people, non-disabled people think of themselves as normal. So let's take it as that for now. But anyway, I cannot walk like most of you here in the room also walk. But so I used a wheelchair. Now this wheelchair gives me the freedom, gives me the, enables me to be able to move around, to be able to do my things, anything that I want to do. Otherwise, I would have been stuck somewhere unable to move. So it gives me freedom. It does not bind me to a place. It gives me freedom. So when you say wheelchair bound, that means it gives out that negative vibe, saying that she's stuck to that wheelchair. That kind of feeling comes out. But when but that is not true. It gives for wheelchair users, it gives them the freedom to be able to do things that which, if there was no wheelchair, then they would not have been able to do. So wheelchair bound is something that we as wheelchair users, we do not like. Some may not mind, and that is also okay, but that is usually that is why we do not like using the word wheelchair bound. So anyway, these are again some more facts, few facts that I wanted to share. Now, disabled people are a historically disadvantaged section of society. We are not talking about a recent event when we come to the situation that disabled people face throughout the ages, throughout history. And it's not only about Nagaland, obviously. It is a global thing, in every part of the world, disabled people, they have been stigmatized, they have been viewed as less of a citizen or less valuable than other people. Throughout the ages, throughout history, they have always been treated more or less like second-class citizens just because they look different, they talk differently, or because they may behave differently from what is perceived to be normal behavior. So people with disabilities have faced numerous, different kinds of challenges and disparities throughout history. And so this actually, with all these unequal treatment, that was there for persons with disabilities, this led to the disability rights movement with the demand for equal opportunities for persons with disabilities as equal citizens.
So another term, differently abled. Differently abled is another term which we use very often, especially nowadays. It is when a person with disability can do the same thing as others but in a different way. In this picture we can see that little girl painting a beautiful picture using his teeth holding the brush. So you can do it in another way but the result is the same. So this is differently abled. Disability, will come to that. Before we go to the types, I'd like to tell you it can be inborn, it can be congenital. From birth or developmentally it can happen. Or another way is it can happen after everything is okay, that person grows up, but he or she faces with an accident that he or she undergoes an amputation that is acquired. So types of disability. So types of disability, according to RBWD Act, Rights to Persons with Disability Act 2016, we have got 21 types. So 21 types, I have just broadly made them into those related with vision, those related with hearing and speech, those related with the mental aspect, those related with the locomotor. When we call locomotor means upper limb, lower limb, and the spine. And the other one is to do with the nerve related, brain, spinal cord, and the nerves. So neurological. And latest inclusions are related with the blood disorders. And a mixture of the disabilities can happen. So that time we can call it multiple disability. Visual disability. So visual disability can be two, blindness, total blindness, or very low vision. Very low vision, just for your information, normal person who can see an object from 18 meters, that person cannot see from 18 meters here, or she has to go till 6 meters, and that also after wearing the specs, he or she can see that. So from that criteria onwards, we call it low vision. Hearing and speech impairment. One can be totally deaf or hard of hearing. Hard of hearing in that we human beings, we hear sound at the range of 0 to 20 decibels. Decibels is a volume of the sound that we hear, but for those persons with hard of hearing, they can hear between 60 to 70 decibels, very loud sound, and beyond 70 decibels, people deaf or hard of hearing, they hear up to that extent only, only in that amount of sound. Speech impairment is also one. Speech impairment is when the brain has difficulty processing the sound and the speech and is unable to give command to the vocal cord, to the tongue to speak out the right words. So the processing may be difficult in the brain. Otherwise, it may be at the local area where the vocal cord is affected, the tongue is affected, or like in this lady, she has got cleft lip. So the sounds may come out, but it may not be so proper. It may not be audible. Brain-related disabilities. Here we've got many categories, but I've just written few. Mental illness. So mental illness can be to do with the mood, perception, orientation of the person is affected very severely that he or she develops various types of mental illness. One very common is the anxiety neurosis, the severe depression that we find in the society, very common. Another one is schizophrenia. People see things which is not there, people hear things which is not there. So like that is called schizophrenia. Bipolar disorders, all these come into the picture. Another one is the intellectual disability. The development of the mind stops so that the person has very low IQ. So in this, normal brain IQ is between 85 to 115. So it can be below 84 and below the IQ level can be very poor. So intellectual disability. One thing I'd like to says because we didn't have many specialists that time maybe, but nowadays we find so many children coming with intellectual disabilities, many to our hospital. Autism spectrum disorder, this is another one with lots of them are coming here. We're finding out, we're discovering that many children, this has to be, I think, in the future, madam, I think we can have to have a consultation regarding this because, I don't know, in the past we never saw like this, maybe because of trained psychologists and all that, maybe not there, psychiatrists and all that, but this time it seems like mushrooming. And almost in every family we are finding autism spectrum disorder, intellectual disability. Children with autism spectrum disorder are those who cannot socialize around, they hide around, and they do repetitive actions. They're slightly low in IQ also, most of them like that. Of course, some autistic people have been one of the greatest ever. So attention deficit hyperactive disorder is another one. This is also found in children. And specific learning disability. Specific learning disability. Specific learning disability is another one, where the child or the fellow, especially found in children actually, the person cannot, read. So that is called dyslexia. Another one is dysgraphia. Dysgraphia is when, thank you, my mom was right, I've got this disability. Thank you. So that child cannot, in few occasions, some children they cannot read, so that is dyslexia. Some children cannot write, it is dysgraphia. Some children cannot do calculations. They are very brilliant, but they cannot do calculations at all. So that is called dyscalculia. Or that some children, they may not even be able to tie their shoelaces, even after training like anything, or brush their teeth. That is dyspraxia. So these kind of learning disabilities are found, and here again, Nagaland, many children are being identified with this problem. Locomotor disability. This is the largest group of disability in the world. So locomotor mein, what happens is, like I told in the beginning, it is to do with the upper limb, lower limb, or the spine affection. So one thing is very common was polio. Everyone knows about polio. Thankfully, since 2014, India has been eradicated with polio. But we find cases, and those we call it post-polio residual paralysis. Paralysis because of polio affection in the past. And most of them are 18, 20 years old people. Otherwise, new cases too, we don't have. Amputation, it can be of the lower limb or upper limb, lower limb, upper limb, like that, amputation. Paralysis can happen. Paralysis, it can be because of stroke. Stroke is when the brain is affected, whether it can be because of bleeding in the brain, or it can be because of blockage of the artery to the brain, some part of the brain, that one part of the body becomes paralyzed, either right or the left. Spinal cord injury, where the person at any level of the spine, it is affected, that either all the upper limb, lower limb becomes paralyzed, or the lower limb only becomes paralyzed. Congenital deformities. Congenital deformity means those deformities that has happened during birth, or meaning when the child is in the womb, or when during development. So one of the picture is there is body shortening, and another one is, we call it club foot, where the foot gets rotated inside. This has to be treated surgically. Club foot is also very common in our place. Dwarfism is another one. Dwarfism, 4 feet and 10 inch and below is regarded as dwarfism. This is also one of the categories of locomotor disability. Leprosy cure. This is another concern, but Thankfully, in Nagaland, we have very few cases of leprosy. That also mostly confined in Dimapur only, but other places, very negligible. What happens is the bacteria that causes the leprosy, it eats away destroys all the nerve. So what happens is the person cannot feel anything. So he or she gets injured time and again on that particular finger or the toes, and it becomes infected. Till that time, he or she doesn't know because he or she cannot feel. That time, slowly and slowly, the limbs, the toes, or the fingers, they break away because of heavily being infected. So these are the deformities that are caused in acid attack victim. Again, Nagaland, I'm sure we don't have any case like that. But in mainland India, many cases are like that, and mostly love related and all that. But many acid attack victims, they suffer severe disability, especially due to vision, hearing, and even the whole body. If the neck and all that is being affected, then they can't even move their neck, rotate their head like that. So severe disability happens. Cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is one very important disability. It can happen. It happens because of damage to the brain during when the child is in the womb of the mother, or while the child is being born during delivery, or right after delivery till 3 years of age, when the brain is growing. That time, any kind of damage to the brain can happen because of sickness to the mother, some medication to the mother, or while delivery, very difficult delivery, or right after birth, jaundice or severe fever, and seizures can happen. So that will damage the brain, and the child develops with this form of disability, cerebral palsy, where they have difficulty in balance and posture, movement, and all that. Very common in Nagaland also, but one very important thing is this is preventable if the mother is being treated very properly in the hospital. So we always advocate pregnant mothers to attend hospitals like that, one of the preventive measures. Chronic neurological disorders is one category. Inside this, many types are there, but I'd like to tell you about a traumatic brain injury. Some accident happens and the brain gets damaged. So during that time, there are intellectual problems, mental problems, as well as they have severe other problems with using the upper limb and the lower limb. Another thing is the amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also very important one, but it is very rare. Here the nerves get paralyzed from, we call it distal, from the end to it grows, the weakness starts from the end and goes up, where ultimately you cannot even move. Alzheimer's disease is forgetfulness, and it usually happens in the elderly period, 70, 80 years or above, where that person cannot even remember the close relative also. This is a picture of Stephen Hawking, one of the greatest scientists who suffered from amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. He died in 2018, but he suffered a lot. But because of all these wonderful gadgets, he lived very, successfully. He could write so many, and he could study the space and everything, and he could contribute lots to science. Muscular dystrophy is another one. Muscular dystrophy is when your muscles become weak and weak. Here, both the calf muscle, it looks very as if he is doing bodybuilding and all that. It looks very swollen, very big, but actually these are very weak muscles. We call it pseudo hypertrophy, false hypertrophy, increasing of the size. So these people, persons who are affected with this, they suffer terribly. Another part of muscular dystrophy is Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Duchenne muscular dystrophy is the worst case among all of them, where the child will die by any means around 14 to 15 years of age. Whatever happens, because the muscles will get weaker, the limb will not be able to walk. He'll become wheelchair bound. Later on, he won't be able to do anything with his hands. And the spine also get affected, that he has to lie down. After that, he doesn't live long and then they die at the age of around 40, 50 years. We have got around 5 cases reported in our establishment. One of few other cases from other districts we couldn't trace back, but we tried to contact them. One fellow from Dimapur only, he died at the age of 17. I should say that is the longest surviving age, otherwise our books say 14 to 15 years. But his mother was one of the main factors why he lived that long, because his mother cared for him so well. So that was one case. And I'm taking some time, but I'd like to tell you, our forefathers speak about very close relatives should not get married. We call it consanguineous marriage. Tissue muscular dystrophy happens because of many cases because of consanguineous marriage, close relatives. Because both the mother and father has got the genes, this disease, to contribute to each other and to form this disease. So our forefathers were just like scientists, so to say, in this matter. Multiple sclerosis is also one where the cover of the nerves are all destroyed. That the brain gets affected, the spinal cord, and everywhere it gets affected. They have got multiple problems from able to think, to do things and all that. Parkinsonism is also one where the brain, one very important ingredient of the brain that is called dopamine is severely, the production of dopamine decreases so that the person trembles a lot. And walking is also very slow and everything is affected. So this is also clubbed under one of the disabilities. We come to blood disorders. There are 3 blood disorders. The first one is hemophilia. Hemophilia is when we get injured, we start bleeding. But when we bleed, ultimately after a few minutes it stops. That is because a very interesting thing is we have got clotting mechanism. Platelets, there are so many chemicals that get involved and then they go and plaster that area which is injured. So at that time the bleeding stops. Now what happens in hemophilia is because one thing, among those ingredients that are used, we call it factor A, that is missing in these persons. So one problem other acids stop because one of the ingredients is not there, say cement and against that. So at that time the person will bleed and bleed. In worst case, so they bleed inside the brain also, and that's when they don't survive. And they can bleed in the internal stomach or anywhere, from any part of the body. Hemophilia is very, so to say, rare, only it is there. But we have found very few cases, hardly one or like that in Nagaland. So, sickle cell anemia is when we call it red blood cell. Everyone knows red blood cell. So red blood cell is usually rounded. But in sickle cell anemia, the word sickle everyone knows now. That kukris the one which farmers use. So that sickle or half moon shape, the red blood cell becomes deformed into that shape. So this shape is very fragile. It breaks away. Almost all the RBCs, red blood cells, with this sickle shape, they break away and then most of the red blood cells are destroyed. So what happens when we don't have red blood cell? One thing is anemia. So anemia. Number 2 is the oxygen is carried by red blood cell. So that oxygen becomes very less. So the person will be, have difficulty breathing and breathing. So thalassemia is also related with red blood cell only. But here the hemoglobin connect us, hemoglobin where oxygen lina bere. So this also becomes deformed. So that time the red blood cell also is deformed, so they break away similar to sickle cell and severe anemia develops. In the Consultative, what we do is track red cell, red blood cell transfusion. So these are not curable at all. Forever, these parents, so they go from door to door seeking help, and they go from hospital to hospital. Almost every month, they are taking blood transfusions. Lastly, we've got multiple disability. Multiple disability can be either one, two, or more of the disabilities clubbed together. One of the most important cases was Helen Keller. She had the worst disabilities ever. Totally blind, totally deaf. But despite of that, she would do lots of things. She wrote books and books, and she inspired many people. But she is the epitome of one, when we talk about it, multiple disability, she's one case. So multiple disability can happen to with more than two.
When it comes to the biblical perspective, both Old Testament, New Testament, which covers thousands of years writing from the different authors in a different context, to bring into the and give a nutshell is not going to be easy. However, I will just pick up a very brief and a nutshell, and at the same time, in a literature perspective also, I will be highlighting. Now, religious belief plays a very significant role in shaping the person's attitude and even the culture. As we read in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, disability portrays that because of sin or disobedience, they are being cursed, and because of which they become this disability. They are mad, they are handicapped, all those things faced because of their sins and because of their disobedience. That's how the Old Testament portrays. Whereas when we see in the New Testament, Jesus Christ, when he came and he started to do a minister, he disputed all this understanding and perspective and worldview of that Testament, Old Testament. So we are going to see a little bit. Now, this is a very important. So Old Testament view that those disabilities are because of the sin, because of the disobedience, because they are being cursed. That's how some of the scholars interpret it in that perspective. But when we look it deeper and look at very carefully, then here in Exodus chapter 4, verse 10 to 12, I want to read here. This passage is another very important text that offers a significant perspective on the people with disabilities. Here it goes like that. But Moses said to the Lord, O my Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor even now, that you have spoken to your servant. But I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. Then the Lord said to him, Who gave speech to mortal? Who makes them mute or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to speak. When God called Moses to lead the people of Israel when the people were in the bondage, Moses came before God in the burning bush, and he said to them, God, Lord, I'm slow in speak. I'm not eloquent. I can't speak well. He brought his disability before God and said, I cannot go. It is impossible, Lord. He reluctant and refused 3 times before God. I'm sure God would have responded to Moses, okay, Moses, I will heal you. You go and deliver my people. But God did not respond to Moses that I will heal you. But God empowered to Moses in his disability and said, go and deliver my people. So God acknowledged, and God said, God took a responsibility and said, is it not I who created? Is it not I who did it? Therefore go. So he empowered in his disability and sent back to Egypt to deliver his people. God did not heal the Moses' disabilities. That's what we can find here in this very text. Moses went and negotiated with the Pharaoh. When he negotiated with the Pharaoh, in my Bible, in our Bible, I don't see that Pharaoh did not discriminate Moses. Pharaoh did not say to Moses, oh, why you are coming? No, Pharaoh did not say in my Bible, in our Bible. And when Moses led the people of Israel from Egypt to Canaan, the people of Israel did not complain to Moses, you are disabled, you are foolish, why you are leading us? In fact, their complaining and murmuring was in a different perspective, not in the Moses' disabilities perspective. So that's how we can find. So Bible, many times, many people, Old Testament always portray that disabilities is because of the sin and it's because curse. They received curse. That's how they interpret. But in this Bible, it's very clear that Moses was called by God in spite of his disability. And Moses, God did not heal him, yet he used him, he empowered him, and he led the people of Israel into the promised land. This is what we can find from this very text. Now, when it comes to the New Testament, to cut short, here we also find the New Testament, John chapter 9, verse 1 to 3. If you read here, this passage is about interplay of sin and disability. And this narrative, the disciple of Jesus brought up a religio-cultural context where disabilities is associated with a generational curse and sin. This text gives one of the clearest incidents of Jesus healing a person with disabilities. Here I want to read this text. As he walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciple asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents? Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's work might be revealed in him. He was born blind not because of the sin, not because of the curse, neither his parents nor this person, but to glorify God, to reveal the mighty work of God. He was blind. Jesus never discriminated that disability person, blind person, but he retaliated, he confronted, he disputed to the disciple and say that no, because traditionally people might say, if you find some disabled people, oh, itu bapa makan kamu bersih lagi, right? Or if you see some disabled people, handicapped people, oh, itu bapa ini kau bersih lagi. Now we discriminate and we look down and we try to judge the person. And that is what even in that time, in the time of Jesus and the time of the Old Testament, people always judge and discriminate these disability people. But Jesus said, no, it is not because of that, because they are going to reveal the mighty work of God. So we are being all created by God in His own image. So we are image bearer of God, God's image bearer. That's what we can find here. Now, in this context, Jesus here stayed and challenged the people, tried to change the worldview and the mindset of the people that it is not because of the sin, it is not because of the disobedience. That's what we can find here. Now, when we see that, therefore, the church today, a church, what we have to do? In our churches, pastors, ministers don't see disabled people coming to the church. Why? Because we don't invite them, or because we don't go to they don't go to the church. They don't come to the church. There's no facility for these disability people in our church. There's no place for them to come and worship. That is one of the reasons that which we can also see from the Bible. Now, I really appreciate, and it's a very thoughtful by the NBCC, Nagaland Baptist Churches Council. I guess every third November Sunday is a disability Sunday. So during that time, all the disabled people are being invited in the church, they are being acknowledged and give some of the gifts and ask them to present some songs or whatever. And that's how the Baptist churches, especially in NBCC and Nagaland, we are organized. So even this year, 17 November, or third Sunday, and this year is a Disability Sunday. And I'm sure all the churches are going to observe. But one thing I'm very much concerned is that only one day in a year, on November 17, how about 51 Sundays? So when we set aside only for one day, very good, excellent, appreciated, but set aside only for one day, and that day they are being invited and ask them to sing or whatever they can do, they do that, they perform that, only that day. The rest of the worship, the rest of the Sunday, we neglect and we forget those people with disabilities. This is what also we see. Therefore, we have to ponder about, think once again, how are we going to do an inclusive worship in our church today? And the church, when we see the Jesus' ministry, he is an inclusive ministry. He welcomes all the people. And when we see in the Jesus' ministry, he never called to the people, hey, you foolish, bakala, bakali, limbra mano, kini aishe. I don't see in the Bible. Jesus never used that kind of terms and terminologies in his earthly ministry. Rather, he stretched out his hand, touched the man, healed the man. And he said, no, it's not because of the sin. It's not because of his parents, but it's going to glorify God. Now, Jesus was always portrayed, viewed in a very much positive and friendly language and terms and terminologies Jesus used in his ministry. Therefore, today, our churches, we need a Jesus' model of church. We need to serve and do our ministry like a Jesus' ministry. This is very much important, and in this generation, we need that kind of ministry today in our churches. Otherwise, just only one Sunday in a year, acknowledge them, ask them to participate. The rest of the day, the rest of the worship, the rest of the Sundays, we forget and we don't care them. This is what we can find in our Christian ministry. Now, when we see our biblical terms and terminologies in the Bible, yes, Bible was written thousands and thousands years back. So many of the terms and terminologies, maybe discriminatory terms and terminologies, we may find it even in the Bible. No doubt, we do that. We accept those like terms and terminologies. But as a Christian, as we read, Jesus was in the New Testament period. The Old Testament terms and terminologies, their perspective was curse one, sin one because of disobedience, and so many discriminatory language and terms are in the Old Testament. But Jesus never used in the New Testament and never judged the New Testament in his earthly ministry, especially when he met to the disabled people. So here, we as a servant of God, as a Christian community, we have to be very careful. We need to update ourselves, the terms and terminologies that we use to the people with the disabilities. Here, the church needs to understand that inclusion and accommodations are not the solution of accepting the people with disabilities, but envisioning a new methodology and mission to have a multi-spaces where all can have equal rights to participate in the church. No doubt, in the Old Testament, some of the terms and terminologies, even in the New Testament, here, Leviticus chapter 21, verses 18 and 19, Matthew chapter 15, verses 30 to 31, we can see directly, addressing to these disabled people. Here they use blind man, cripple, mute, mad, deaf, dumb, lame, and disfigure, disformed, hunchback, handicap. Some of the terms that it's used in the Bible, no doubt. And even today, many of the terms and ancient terms that we use, handicap, wheelchair bound, mentally handicapped, mentally defected, mentally patients, there are so many terms we use in this ancient time. These terms are in one way or other way we can say outdated and discriminatory terms and terminology. Why don't we church can avoid these discriminatory terms and terminologies? Why don't we evolve or develop a new acceptable terms and terminologies? Why don't we church come with more people with disabilities friendly terms and languages so that they can feel more comfortable and they can feel the inclusion in our community. This is very important. Now, when we see handicap, person with disabilities, there are some certain terms that are very old terms that we have, and today we still use them. Mentally disorder, deaf and dumb. Those terms. So why don't we use hard of hearing person? A kind of hard of hearing person, a kind of mentally ill person, wheelchair user, right? Instead of wheelchair bound, we use discriminatory language, but wheelchair user, anyone can use the wheelchair. It's not only the disabled people. When you are sick at some point of a time, we also will be using the wheelchair. So these are very important. Mentally handicapped, what do we use? Person with learning disability. These are the certain terms and terminologies which we have to be very aware in our ministry as a Christians in our community. Now, when it comes to literature, I, as a Sangam Literature Board Chairman, now we are also slowly this kind of terms and terminology, we become more aware of it now. Because the Bible, as I said, in the ancient time, the language and terms and terminology directly address and use as discriminatory terms and terminologies that has been used. In Sangam, since I'm the Sangam and the literature board in the Sangam literature, here we use atomara in Sangam, akakara, atomara, foolish, akakara, foolish. We just, itu pakalado, itu pakalito, right? Itu dimaptik na takado. That kind of terms we literally translated and used even in the Bible sometimes, and even the ancient time we speak in that way. Say like amagyonra in Sangam, and then we say tatu tamdamra, mage machapra. All those terms I'm not translating all in English, but mentally disorder, right? Or foolish. Sometimes the church information, November 17 is a Disability Sunday. Then what goes through? Itu tu pakalikan imite church worship pakala today. So mano offering power ani divide. Right? It's very unfortunate terms and terminologies. We church members, we use that. Sometimes in the pulpit, we use that kind of terms and terminologies. So we have to be very careful, and the church needs to be very careful. Jesus never used these kind of terms and terminologies and discriminate those in his earthly ministry. And we should take the example of Jesus in our ministry today, in our church, in our Christian life, in our community. These are the terms even in Sangam we have. But now, in our literature, we have come up with one language which is very sweet and friendly to the people with disabilities. Is that Jalo Hilora. It's kind of, if anyone, if any Sangam is sitting here, they will come to know. Jalo Hilora is a friendly language to the disabled people. It's a loving language. So when we say a Jalo Hilora, that means it's a kind of very lovingly, they are not able person. They are disabled person. That's the language. And thank God we use that one in some of the texts in the Bible translation. In the new version, they have used this channel in order, which is, I really appreciate that terms and language. We have also some languages terms that have come up, but we don't use. We usually use only the outdated and old terms and terminologies we use, and those languages are. But now we have come up to the new terms and trying to work it out, and this is Machimachamra. Machimachamra, that language in Sangam. And I'm sure we have a literature board here, many people. We need to think over it. We we need to update and upgrade in our terms and terminologies when we meant about the disabilities. Much is kind of, they are, maybe physically, mentally, emotionally, and every aspect. So we say, very loving word, very soft and friendly language we call Machimachamra. Another language which is Suro Matsara. The Suro Matsara can be a general term again. That is, it can be a financially, it can be a mentally, it can be a emotionally, it can be a physically, those who are not in a good condition. And that's also, we come up with this word, but we don't use much. So we have to encourage, and we sometimes, we also, with this, we will try to encourage our people to use this kind of terms, since we have this kind of terms and terminology, even in Sangam, but they don't use much. And we said another, of mabechora, unhealthy, of a mabechora. When our doctor, he brought all the names and all the causes, all the things that is shown with us with a PP, PowerPoint, and along with the picture. All those things, even in Sangam, if you call them Machimachamra, Suro Matsara, Afamabechora, all these terms can apply, it can be applied to anyone. Okay? And it's a very sweet and very loving and friendly terms and terminologies we have in our Sangam language too. Therefore, all the literature port and Nagaland, let's try to work it out, friendly terms and terminologies where these disabled people can feel comfortable and they also can feel the inclusion. And now, here the Bible at the last, I want to read out Leviticus chapter 19, verse 14. Do not curse the theft or put a stumbling block in front of the blind, but fear your God, I am the Lord. God strictly warned to the people to care the disabled people. Here, even in the Matthew chapter 5, verse 22, it reads that anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of the hell. Don't call to people, papali, namatibig. Itu bishirik sa today, Isobra, Bible day, this is strictly one for us. Therefore, I challenge and urge all the Christians and all the people, let's use terms and terminologies, sweeter, better, friendly terms, where they can feel comfortable and where they can also feel that inclusion. Thank you. God bless you.